We're live.
Nice.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new series that I'm calling Building Svelte Society. And we're going to build the new Svelte Society website on the Svelte Society YouTube channel. Amazingly. So today we have Penguin, or Peter, I guess. I don't know what you prefer.
Whatever.
Whatever. All right. We'll go with Penguin. People probably know you more that way, right?
Yeah.
So today we're gonna start by getting the repo set up, and we're gonna use a monorepo, which I know close to nothing about. So Peter's here to guide me through this scary journey of figuring this out, and hopefully some other people watching can also learn something. But yeah, so before we start, this is a sneak peek of the new Svelte Society website. The copy isn't correct at the moment, and the like all the links and all the categories, they're not 100% correct. But yeah, so this is what we're gonna work towards. And so this is just like a mock-up of the recipes page, and this is where you end up when you go to the landing page. But yeah, so Peter, how do I do this? What's the first step?
So the first step is, have you got a?
You know what?
Do you have?
Wait, before that, maybe you want to introduce yourself.
Should I? I am Peter. Yeah, so I'm a Svelte maintainer. I'm the author of MD Specs. I'm a software engineer, currently working at Hugging Face, where we're building machine learning stuff. Currently working on an app product called Gradio, which allows you to build machine learning apps in a few lines of Python. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. And I'm a big fan of monorepos. I'm not really, but they are useful. They are useful.
All right, cool. So
yeah,
that out of the way.
Do you have a repo?
I don't have a repo.
Let's create a repo. Yeah.
Okay. So just any.
Yep. Just a normal.
There we have one.
Nice.
What's next?
Okay. So a monorepo is just a normal repository. It's just that it has. So let's get the terminology out of the way.
Yep.
A monorepo is a normal repository. So it's not like every repo is a monorepo. A repo can only be one repo. It's just, it has lots of packages inside it. That's the only thing. So it's, in more accurate kind of phrase, is a multi-package repository. So the only real difference is, instead of having lots of different kind of repositories to store different things, we're going to put them all into a single repo here. So my recommendation is usually to use pnpm to start with. There are more powerful, more complex monorepo tools out there. Turbo Repo, NX, Rush. There's kind of like lots, but you only really need those when you kind of reach a certain scale, because they do some nice things. Like, and it depends, like if you've got a big team of people working on something, if you kind of like, you've got lots of CI runs going on, there's lots of caching and stuff that goes on behind the scenes in those tools. But pnpm is a really nice tool for, certainly for smaller monorepos. So that's where I
think that fits perfectly for Svelte Society, right?
Yeah, and for most open source projects, there are very few open source projects that reach the scale you're going to need lots and lots of dedicated tools, where there's hundreds, maybe thousands of people working on them. You know, Google have got like a billion lines of code in their monorepo. Right. That is the kind of, you know, scale that orgs reach. But yeah, so, and for pnpm, essentially all you need to start using pnpm's monorepo management tools is a configuration file. And that configuration file is a pnpm workspace.yaml. So it's probably worth, I drop you a link here and you visit this link, because it's probably worth seeing this. Mm-hmm. It's just a YAML file with a single package, and it goes in the root of the repo, and it has a kind of a package key. And then you just list all of the folders that you want to be treated as a workspace. And a workspace is a folder that's going to contain a number of packages. And each of those packages is going to have its own package.json. And so when we talk about packages here, what we really mean is a folder with a root package.json. Even if they're nested, you can have nested workspaces as well, nested packages as well. So the only kind of important factor is the presence of a package.json. So just create a pnpm workspace.yaml in the root of this repository.
That's irritating. All right, here we go. So just what was the name? Sorry.
pnpm hyphen workspace .yaml.
All right.
And I think it has to be YAML. It can't be YML because YAML files can be either, but I think it has to be that.
Interesting.
I think that's this one. And yeah, so just create a key packages. So packages :
Yep. 1 second. Seems my audio is pretty low here. Let's see. Is that better? Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Or is it?
I can, yeah.
All right. Let's see. All right. So, sorry. What were you saying?
Yeah. So just create a packages key. So just packages and then colon. It's a YAML file, so you don't need any.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then on a new line, you can put, you've got it indent 1 and then a hyphen. And here, what we're going to put is the name of the folder where we want to contain all of our package. Now, traditionally, this is called packages, but it can be anything, and you can have multiple as well. So if you wanted to split things up in a variety of different ways, you could do that. So we can start with packages if you want.
That makes sense.
And then we can see. And this supports kind of glob things. So for example, so we need packages /* even.
So like this.
And we might need to wrap this in quotes because of the asterisk. So this is basically going to say any, and this is very specific. So any top level folder of packages, so any folder inside packages will be treated as part of the workspace, but nothing deeper. And the reason this is useful is sometimes it can pick up nested packages that realistically you don't really want. So keeping it constrained is nice. So now we can create a packages folder.
Would that be so? Yeah. So just a question there. So that would be useful maybe if we had like a UI library that we wanted to also split up into individual components rather than just a full.
Yeah. So for example, so when I've worked, so I'm a big advocate with component libraries for independent package versioning. So each component should be independently versioned. It reduces kind of update churn in a very large component library that changes very rapidly, which internal component libraries in organizations tend to change every day, like many times a day. And you often you don't want to be updating your app, if you might not be using the components that have been updated. So keeping those things separate is nice. And then you could have your applications in a separate package. You could have utilities in a separate package. Maybe you've got helpers and things, and maybe you've got lots of packages for those. You can have a whole suite of tools, because you got to remember the nice thing about a monorepo is it's just already there set up for you. You want to add more stuff, you can just add new packages. So it's really easy.
Yeah.
So now we just create a packages folder again in the root of the repository. And that is essentially this becomes one of our workspaces. I guess the workspace in principle is the whole thing, but
right. Yep.
And so now the question is how do you want to split up? So what is this repository going to be? That'd be my question.
Yeah. So in my head, I'm imagining I'll have a Svelte kit front end thing that does the server side rendering and all of that stuff. And I'm also going to have a backend on Cloudflare Workers that's going to handle basically going to be the CMS pretty much. So it's going to handle like auth and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Storing, getting data, updating data. Yep.
Cool.
So just 2 packages, I guess, for now.
What about things like components?
Yeah. Yeah, we could probably split that up. That'd be interesting to see how that works.
Yeah, it will. Okay, so let's make a couple of kind of folders inside of packages, and
does it make sense to call it front end? What would you
call it what you want. You could call it your app or site, or you can in the Svelte. We have a sites monorepo that contains all of the sites, or will, and we name folders are named whatever the domain is. So we've got like svelte.dev, we've got kit.svelte.dev. So that can be a way. If you have lots of sites, that can be one way to do it as well.
It's just going to be one now, for now.
Yeah. And I think it would probably be good to have like, even if we just delete it later, just to illustrate kind of how monorepos work, to create like a utils package for now. And then we can kind of demonstrate how this kind of pieces together. So yeah. So each of these is going to need a package.json file. But what it might be worth doing is maybe bootstrapping a SvelteKit app inside, because that will generate all of that stuff for you. So we can run create Svelte inside the sites app, or whatever it's create
site. Yeah.
Create kit. Create Svelte. Let's find out what it is.
Is it kit dot? We should know this.
Should know this.
pnpm init.
Oh, init Svelte app next. My app. Okay.
Oh wait, I guess
You can just dot.
It? Oh
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So if you go into it, you can just do dot and and it'll ask you some questions.
Yes. We want the skeleton one. We want TypeScript. We want ESLint. Yes. Everything. All right.
Cool. So let's see what that's given us.
A bunch of files.
Bunch of stuff. Cool. Okay. In let's do something similar. So let's maybe go. Let's create a package.json in components. That might be a good illustration of this. And if you just want to, like, it might be just worth copying the one that's been generated for you, so you don't have to. Obviously, we'll need to delete some stuff, but like all of the dependencies and all of the scripts.
Do we even need the keys?
We need type module. We need a name.
So
but this is fine. So let's call this. So this is good. We're going to need an entry point as well. Let's just put a. Let's create an index, and then in our package.json, let's like make them the main. Is it the main module? I can't keep up with package.json.
Let's see here.
Main, and maybe are you going to need a Svelte key as well? You could to point to the same thing.
Sorry, what?
Might not. You might need like a Svelte key, but if you're not going to publish these for now, so we can leave that as it is.
Yeah.
So.
Let's use JS.
Yeah. So that's our entry point, and we've got our site. So the value of a monorepo is that it helps like managing dependencies like much simpler. And I mean, one nice thing about it is it kind of has this kind of forced separation. So you kind of like you get these kind of this structure by default. And one thing that's really nice about it is, and SvelteKit has this alias thing, this kind of lib alias that Rich spoke about it at Society, and it's a nice feature, but it is an alias, which means to say it's a non-standard thing that you have to teach a tool. So you've just basically told Vite, or you've told SvelteKit, or you've told your various tools, and TypeScript being one of them, hey, when I say this, what I actually mean is this file path. So when you see this, go here. The way pnpm works, when you say install your components package into site, it doesn't have aliases at all. It has hard file links. So it's on the file system. The links are made actually on the file system. So any tool that tries to fetch a certain path, it will be hard linked to a specific location. So you don't need to teach anything about that alias. It already knows by default. So
right.
So if we create in components, maybe let's create a component. So maybe create a source directory and create just something, anything really. Yeah, that works.
Something like that. I guess we need to export it as well.
Yeah.
So export. Let's see here. I always forget this as button. Is that right?
Default. It'll be default.
Default. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I think wildcard would work actually. Not sure.
Source button. All right.
Cool.
All right.
So when you want to install a package, so the problem you're going to have here is that you've called your package components, and the name is important because that's what it's going to get installed as. That's going to be the package name. So what I tend to do is give it a namespace. So all kind of like any kind of components that are like local to a monorepo and going to stay local, I often give it a kind of like a namespace of, some people use like this / or @self, and it just becomes this kind of qualifier. But you could, it could be, you could use a short version of Svelte Society. I was going to recommend something, but we all know that's a bad idea. But
let's call it Society.
@Society. Yeah, that works.
So do I change the folder name to that? Or?
Well, no. So the way I kind of like think of this is the scope is really just so that when you see them in your code, you know that this is a local thing. So
right.
this is a package that is local. It's it is a good practice to have the name of the package match the folder name because it's just easier to navigate then. But I think having a kind of like a standard rule like the @Society part is kind of implicit. And then the second bit. So by default, the way pnpm works, I think is I can't actually remember the details of it, but the way it works, I think, is it will check npm to see if a package exists, and then it will check your local kind of local workspace to see if it exists there. I think that's how it works, and you can actually override that behavior. You can definitely, I know this part's true, you can override that behavior, so it will always prefer local workspaces. So for example, if you've got a bunch of packages that conflict with npm ones and you always want to use your own local ones, then you can make that call. And you can configure that in, I think you configure it in the npm-rc file, which is where the vast majority of pnpm config goes, is actually in the npm-rc file when you need it. You don't really need it much though. So let's try installing this package in site. So if we
so is this already like set up basically?
Yeah, sorry. So if you go to the root of this repo and just run pnpm-i, this will all work, he says. Confidently.
So this is in the site directory. That should probably be in.
That's it. Doesn't. I don't think it matters. I think it knows that you're in workspaces anyway. But
all right.
Yeah. So if you check your folder structure now, you can check you should have a root node modules.
Yeah.
And if you go into your packages,
there it is.
And you go into your site, you should also have a node modules in your site.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of the node modules in your site are just going to be links back. There's very little actually there, because one of the things that pnpm does just in general, even if you're using it, whether it's for a monorepo or not, is it prevents you from downloading lots and lots of duplicate packages. So it has its own kind of So what you've got here is you've got a node modules in one of your packages that is linking to a node modules in the root workspace, which is linking back to your pnpm store, which is the persistent store of all of the different versions of different packages you've installed.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that works. That's it. Like, you're done. And essentially what pnpm is going to do is it's going to kind of hoist various dependencies for you and figure out kind of like the most efficient ways to do things. But it's also going to do things like, I mean, it might break at times because pnpm is very strict about dependencies, whereas
Yep.
npm and yarn traditionally aren't, although I have no idea about recent versions of yarn because I don't use new versions of yarn. And one of the things it prevents is kind of undeclared dependencies that are still available in the tree. Like, pnpm doesn't like that at all, and it wants you to be very, very explicit about your dependencies. So sometimes things will break, and you might need to install a dependency, or you might need to, you can. It has an option that is called shamefully hoist, because pnpm doesn't have a flat node dependency structure with its with a monorepo. It has little, like, and in any kind of situation, but you can flatten it. So if you need to hoist everything to the top level, so every dependency that's required in your entire application is at the top level, so it could be found by those kind of packages that don't declare the dependencies properly.
Yeah.
Then it works. And sometimes you do need to do that, but ideally
Ideally not.
Yeah, ideally not.
So we have a question here from everyday developer. He came a bit late, and he wants to know why pnpm workspace and not turbo repo and nx. And I guess you answer that in the beginning, right? It's just simpler. We don't need the complexity.
And so those tools are really powerful, but they also have very strong opinions about how you do things, and they come with a bunch of tooling and stuff. And I don't know, like, I don't know if anyone's been burned by a learner workspace in the way that I've been burned by a learner workspace, but learner basically was unmaintained after a while, and it has very strong opinions about how you structure your configuration, all these different things that you need to do, and then all of a sudden you're left with this kind of unmaintained piece of software, and it's like, what do I do? Like, in a large organization where lots of people depend on a single monorepo, say it's a large component library, and you're using Learner to manage stuff, all of a sudden you've got to migrate. Like, when do you find the time to do that in a way that is, as undisruptive as possible and stuff? So pnpm is a package manager first with really strong monorepo support. So when you start adding tools like nx, turbo repo, whatever, you're still going to have a package manager. But then these other tools are going to bring other things. So, for example, Rush, which is quite popular, heavily used, it's developed by Microsoft and used internally by Microsoft. You can use that with whatever package manager you want. By default, it works like really well with pnpm, and they rely on pnpm. But you could use others. So the more tools you layer, the more maintenance you've got, the more of a burden there is to keep on top of versions and all kinds of stuff. Because your monorepo tooling is a dependency as well. It's not this panacea. So my kind of philosophy is keep it simple, and then when you have the problems that those tools solve, look into those tools and kind of mature in that way. So
yeah,
we were going to install, right? So if we jump into the sites repo
editor,
in your terminal, so if you can just pnpm add, and then whatever the package was called, at society/components, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So now go into your Svelte app, and you should be able to. Well, actually, let's check the package.json of this application. So, and we can see what it does. So we've installed this as a dependency, and we can see here it says workspace 0.0.1. So it does respect versions and stuff as well. Now, if you imagine this was actually a npm package that you wanted to publish. It wasn't a site, but it was actually a package. Obviously, if you ship your code with workspace : 0.0.1, that's going to break. Like, that's not going to work. You know, if someone is using npm or yarn or something like that, they might not understand that. So when pnpm publishes, what it does is it removes all those workspace references and puts a real version in. If it's a true dependency and you're not going to, you're not bundling. So those things do get removed. But what this will tell pnpm is, this is the thing that's, and you saw as it was installed, it was just like ...
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of, from, this package or whatever. So yeah, so we should now, assuming we've set our package.json up properly, be able to use this by importing whatever it was, button from the package. And it should also complete. Yeah. See, and that's what's nice about this. You don't need to teach your tools about all of your aliases and stuff. Like if this was an alias, a custom alias you set up, you'd have to teach TypeScript about that alias and all kinds of things. But because it's just the file system, it just works.
So I'm getting an error here. Oh, that's probably something. Cannot find package.
Adapt auto.
So that's separate.
That's upsetting. Yeah, that's your config, not that's your.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it should be there though. Anyway, let's see if it runs. If you can run whatever it is, pnpm dev.
Oh, did I? Oh.
Does it need a /?
Yeah.
Let's see.
So do I need to reinstall it?
No, you shouldn't. I don't think you should.
Import button. Oh, of course.
Ah, yeah.
Ooh, all right. Let's see.
Okay.
Can I bring this up? Localhost. I can confirm. There's a button here.
Nice. So there's that button.
Yeah, there it is.
Well, where this is like really, really nice is, can you imagine you had, so say you had your component library and you were kind of gonna, publish all these components. So once you've you want people to be able to build sites just like SvelteKit, just like the society site. So you decide to ship a bunch of components, and then one day, you're coming to kind of build a feature, and you realize that your feature, you're going to need to make some changes to some of your components in order to implement that feature. Maybe you need to add some new props, or maybe you need a new media query. It can be as simple as that. But if you imagine if that was in a separate published, it's a published kind of package, but imagine that was in a separate repository, you'd have to go into that repository, like make the changes, commit those changes, whatever. You'd have to kind of like link that package to your site to validate that they were working in the way you wanted. In the context of the whole point of the change is to build a specific feature, I need to make sure I can actually build that feature. So then you've got to actually use something like, npm link, pnpm link, yarn link, or use one of the linking tools. And linking is very fragile. Like it can be, it breaks all the time. But then the worst thing is you've got to go and make 2 pull requests. You've got to make 1 pull request to the component library. Right. You've got to merge that, publish it, everything. Then you can go back. You've got to throw away the changes you've made via linking. Then you've got to kind of like update the versions, blah, blah, and make another pull request. Whereas that whole process is streamlined, right? So you can just kind of like make a single, very kind of like vertical pull request where I want to build a feature. Here's all the different changes that are required. And if you have like, you might have more packages, there might be some helpers you need to update and stuff like that. And that's where it's a really nice workflow, and even if, say, today you don't want to publish this, but you've got a separate package there with your components in. Tomorrow you might want to publish it, and if you do want to publish it, it's a case of it's basically a case of running pnpm publish. It's basically just that. Obviously, managing publishing and stuff is a whole topic in itself, and you might want to add more tooling, but it essentially is that easy because you've got the structure already. Because a package needs to be published, it needs to be a package. Well, you've already got a package. So if you wanted to publish it, it'd be pretty straightforward to do that.
Cool.
So,
All right. So it's working then. That's nice. It's
yeah,
really I really I definitely recognize the thing about doing multiple pull requests to build something, and then it's horrible, horrible.
it's it's really interesting for people who like work across lots of repos at work, especially like when, and what's really difficult about it in that context is when you're tracking work with something like Jira or something like that, trying to map pull requests to Jira tickets is
Oh
really
wow,
difficult
yeah,
because it's kind of like, well, I have done some work on this ticket, but I've not finished the ticket, so I can't even move it from in progress. It's still in
yeah,
progress. You can't chop a ticket up. Like, yes, you can add subtasks and you can start moving them across and stuff, but whereas, you know, or you have those kind of situations where it's like little, very small configuration changes to lots of packages. Like being able to
right,
do them in a
yeah,
single pull request is like way nicer than. And the other big benefit I think is it allows you to have, if you've got one repo, you can have one prettier config, you can have one ESLint config, you can have one TypeScript config, you can share all of those things. It's easier to be consistent within a code base. You can share all of your CI. You don't need to set it up again and again and again. Like when you kind of like, you need a new
yeah,
package, here you just create a new folder and then you gain all of the tooling
yeah,
is already there. If that was a repo, you'd have to set up, your editor
yeah,
config, and you
exactly,
wonder why is it auto formatting to spaces, and what do I need to do to make this stuff, and all that, that whole
yeah,
process.
yeah.
But yeah, but that is it. Like it's that simple, really. It's that
That's
that workspace. YAML.
deceptively easy.
Yeah, and let's be real. Like, you do occasionally run into problems with
Mhm.
versions not quite matching up and stuff like that. But usually you can just like pnpmi from the root. You might need to clear out your node modules and pnpm install from scratch again.
Yeah.
But in general, it's relatively easy. I guess what could do is we should look at some of the how to work with a monorepo a little bit maybe. So one of pnpm's most powerful features is filtering, and it has, and I'll throw up the docs because they're an interesting read. And what it essentially allows you to do is run a command on as many of your packages as you want. So pnpm has a recursive flag, which is -r or -- recursive, which allows you to basically run the same command in lots of repos. So if you had like hundreds of packages and you wanted to build them all before publishing, you could just do a pnpm dash like pnpm build like -r, and that would run build in every
Right.
single package. It will go and check to see if that package has a build script, and if it does, it will run it. If it doesn't, it will just carry on and ignore it. Or if you want, it can fail if you want that behavior. It also has a filtering, so you can run pnpm some command, and instead of just like -r, which will run it in every repository, in every package, sorry, you can pass it a filter. And the way in which you filter is, well, there's lots of ways to filter, but you can filter by name. So you could say pnpm test -- filter, and then in quotes at society /*, and then that will run
Right.
the test command in every package whose name starts with at society /,
So
for example.
does this follow so it follows this name, right?
Yes,
Not the
that's
actual name of the folder, right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
this is where your kind of your workspace YAML comes into play, in that, in the same way that those packages are treated as local packages. So if it's, it will, link those, using that workspace syntax in your package JSON. Same is true for filtering. So it will check everything in packages. If you added a new one called components or something, it would check in that workspace as well, and it will run through them all. But you can filter in really kind of like a variety of different ways. So for example, it's got like, there's a weird syntax that you use, but basically it's like you can select a package and all of that package's dependencies, or you can select a package and all of the packages that are dependent on it, for example. So, or you can select a directory, or you can select only the dependencies of a package. So it's a very, very kind of like powerful filtering tool. And I think that's one of the important things about kind of pnpm it's not just looking at your packages and just running a bunch of scripts for them. What it's doing is it's building a dependency graph, and it's going to run them in the correct order. So the ones that depend on others, it'll run them essentially in kind of like reverse order. Because obviously you don't want to, if you've got packages that depend on one another, you want to make sure you build the ones that are dependent, are dependencies first and stuff. And pnpm takes care of that kind of thing for you, which is nice. Cool. But yes, I think, for example, in if you wanted to see a more kind of beefed up the kit repository, the Svelte kit repository is a monorepo. And
let's take a look at that.
Yeah, it has some interesting stuff because there's a lot of different things in that repo. So it has packages, normal packages. It has a big package, lots of little packages. It has, does it have an app? Does it have a site still? I think the site got moved, actually.
Yeah, but the site used to be in here, right? Yeah.
It did, yeah. So it has Kit itself. It has all of the adapters, which are individual packages. And then it has create Svelte. And create Svelte's kind of interesting and quite problematic in a way, because create Svelte is it's what when you run npm init at Svelte, that internally under the hood calls the binary of the create Svelte package. And it's interesting because it's a package, and if you kind of if you go into packages there, and you go into create Svelte. So if you go into templates,
there it is, yeah.
And you go into either of those, I think will work. You can see that this has this is like a package.
Oh, right.
It has like package.jsons, and and the same is true of if you go into shared. All of those kind of weird kind of package names, these are all the different bits of config that get composed together, but they all contain like different files, and some of them contain package.jsons, and these things will get merged together and stuff to create the app that you want it to create, depending on what options you select. But this causes problems because there are so many package.jsons knocking around that it can kind of cause issues, and we have had issues in the past, and that's why it's good to restrict things sometimes to the top level. But on the same token, we don't actually necessarily want to do that in this case, because we actually do want these templates to kind of update themselves. So when we our package.template.jsons for the skeleton and whatever the other one's called, they have versions and stuff in them, and we want those versions to stay up to date without us needing to manually do them. So we do use some tooling to do that. But this is a kind of an interesting in fairness, it's relatively simple for the most part, because all of the adapters are pretty small and pretty much kind of independent things that get published. Create Svelte depends on lots of different things in the repository, and Kit actually depends on a few. Kit, I think, does some automatic stuff. Maybe it doesn't actually. Maybe that'll be Create Svelte actually that's putting that together. I wonder if it has. No, I don't think it does. Yeah, it's the template that puts in the auto adapter and stuff like that. So that's where that dependency would be. But yeah, so this is what it might look like typically. I think there are some big ones. I think Babel is a really good example of a large monorepo. I don't know what tooling they're using at all.
Yeah,
but it's a big one.
So if we look at this one, I guess. Yeah, right. No, okay, that makes sense. So this.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we've added extra entries, and actually that's a really interesting thing is we've added you can see there it's GitHub/actions.
Yep.
So that is a GitHub. I don't know what it does. I'm gonna have to look at it.
Yeah, where is the actions thing anyway? Let's see.
Yeah, so if you go into workspace, you
Forget.
can see GitHub/actions, and then
It was in there, but the... Oh, there it is.
let me
Oh, so
check
it's
this.
just one package.
Oh, yeah, okay. So this is very embarrassing because I think I wrote this. It's got my name on it anyway. Yeah, so this is
That's
so
a
this
long
is
time
actually
ago.
10 months. It's long enough.
Yeah.
It's actually an action to check what operating system you're in and stuff like that.
Right.
To do with caching paths and things. But what's interesting about it is that the way actions work essentially is the code needs to be there. Like there's no weird publish step. Like npm's this weird black box. You run publish and you do some installs and stuff just kind of goes off somewhere else. Like that's not how actions work. You have to the actual code you want to run has to be there. So if you've got dependencies or anything like that, then you need to bundle and you need to commit the code. And if you're using a tool like pnpm to manage your dependencies, then you'll want your GitHub Actions to also have the dependencies managed by pnpm. You don't want to have to kind of dive into that folder and update stuff separately, right, and all that sort of stuff. So it got added. That's why we added it. And you can do stuff like that. If GitHub has strong opinions about where actions need to be located, and that's fine. You can just teach pnpm about that different location. If we want to, we've got actions and then there's a /env. We can add more actions here if we need to. That's fine. Yeah. And pnpm will manage our dependencies for us.
Yeah. So this seems to me like you could actually, so there's a question in the chat about using the root directory as the, so I guess they're asking if you can just do a /* or /wildcard
I've got no idea.
Catch all of the folders.
No idea. We should try it.
Yeah, should.
Let's do it.
Let's see.
Maybe.
So, like,
yeah. So
I guess we could do this, right? So that would catch. No, that
yeah.
Won't work.
No, it should. Well, you'd need.
You'd need to like skip this one, I guess, or maybe you don't. I don't know.
I've got no idea. So what you'll need to do is like if you just kind of copy your packages though, and then just pull them all into the root.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, so if you just copy the contents and drag them into root.
So basically,
and just remove. Let's see what happens. See if run pnpmi and see what it says. It might not like it at all.
Oh, I'm in. Where am I?
You're in a deleted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Workspace. Why isn't it working?
Do a cd tilde.
CD. I don't even know. Oh, there it is.
That should take you home.
Yeah, workspace, society. All right, here we go. Oh. What?
What would you did you put slash? Maybe.
Yeah.
So that's gonna try. That's gonna want to go to root. Oh, like what? No. Oh, so you're trying to.
pnpmi permission. You know what?
Yeah.
I'll just do this. What?
Yeah, that's fine. No, that's right, isn't it? Because it's trying to access root, because we've put / as the package name. So maybe put the dot slash.
Oh, yeah, of course.
See if that. I don't know if it'll.
Yeah.
2 workspace projects. That
it
seems to have worked.
Yeah, should we?
Check the site, say, but.
Let's see here. Post. Yeah, seems to be working fine.
Yeah.
I guess that's
cool.
nice. But
Yeah, it is.
like,
If you don't want that depth of nesting, yeah.
it is kind of nice to have it, because you probably want to use the root for other stuff, right? Like prettier configs and all that stuff.
And if you ever want to, I mean, one of the nice things about is if you ever add in additional languages, not just JavaScript, if you're going to clutter the root with kind of packages, then it's going to be difficult. It's nice to sometimes separate those things up. Not that most open source projects are multi-language repos, but certainly more and more common these days than it used to be, with more tooling being written in Go and Rust and whatever other language is popular.
Yeah.
But yeah, and
right.
I think that the one thing to kind of bear in mind is that you should try to work from a monorepo from the root as much as possible. Like if you are just working with a specific kind of a specific package for any reason, it's fine to work within that package. So like if you've got a site here and a couple of libraries here, then it's fine to treat the site differently to those packages. You've got a kind of like a dev server to run and stuff.
Yeah.
But it is worth trying to kind of to work from the root as much as possible. So using those kind of like filtering commands that pnpm has, use those kind of things to run, to start a dev server in your application, to run your tests and things like that. Even if that means adding your own custom scripts to kind of say, like whatever it is you want to do. Like, so maybe you need a fancy script where, you're going to filter, but you also want to be able to filter even more deeply than that. Maybe your tools don't necessarily support that level of filtering, but trying to come up with workflows that you can do from the root will give you a much, much nicer experience in a monorepo. I think that I'm always jumping in and out of packages anyway, but you can, like, for example, you can add, I don't actually know what the commands are, but I think you can add packages to specific, you can install npm packages to specific workspace packages from the root with a certain command or whatever. I often just hop in because I'm not installing dependencies that frequently. And I think the other thing is, I don't really use dev dependencies. I don't think that's a thing in a monorepo. So for example, in the root of a monorepo, that is, every dependency is just a dependency, because the monorepo no one installs the monorepo. So it's only a dev environment ever. So it removes that burden of kind of like, what kind of dependency is this? Like, just don't think about it, just install it and get on with your life. And then all of your kind of tooling should be treated that way. And then worry about that stuff for the actual package. Like, is this going to be shipped? Is it not going to be shipped? And then you can think about that. But then all of that stuff preferably should be installed in the root. So your ESLint and your TypeScript and your Prettier and your Husky and whatever other awful tools that you've decided to do should all be installed in the root.
Yeah. So ideally, I should have just answered no on all of these things. Well, I guess there's still some kind of configuration that you might need to do.
There is, and TypeScript, unfortunately, it will probably require you to do some, even if it's just for paths. TypeScript needs to know where it is, and so what you do in that situation, you'd have like a base TS config, and then if you needed additional TS configs in the various packages to kind of just let it know where it is, and you might need different options depending on the nature. So like a Svelte kind of package might need the Svelte plugins and stuff, whereas a plain, like say, if you wanted to have a package that was just actions, they might just be plain JS. They don't need all the Svelte config and stuff. So you would have a base TS config, and you might have like a base TS config and then a Svelte base TS config and stuff. And then what you can do is you can just extend them in your other TS configs that you put inside of your files. I have found with monorepos that I don't need many kind of like duplicate config files, but I often need a TS config in each package. But ESLint and Prettier and stuff like that, you only need one at the root, and then you can pick all of those up that way. And which is good, because you don't want inconsistencies in formatting and linting across the repo. So
Yeah, I think that was we've almost been running for, I think, 50 minutes. Yeah, 50 minutes. We've been live for
Yeah.
50 minutes. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I think so. This was a lot easier than I imagined it being.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm gonna take a look at doing like the ESLint stuff and the prettier stuff in the root and see if that.
Yeah, and I'd encourage you
That is.
to take a look at the pnpm docs. They're very good. There's a Discord, there's a pnpm Discord, and the you know the creators on there and stuff. And loads of people have. If you run into any issues, it's a great place to post. Things get fixed and attended to pretty quickly with pnpm. But the docs are very good. It has a bunch of kind of recipes and advanced usage and stuff in there. You can learn a little bit more about the filtering, which is really good as well. But yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. Oh wow. My monitor just decided to crash.
Oh.
I guess that's a good
An omen.
An omen, yeah. All right. Thanks for showing me this stuff. I'm probably gonna ask you to show me something about change sets and some other stuff at some point if you're
That's
interested
cool.
in joining me again.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, cool. And thanks everyone for watching. And if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below. Bye.
Bye.